Go Push family. I am Jonathan Jackson, the son of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. It's my privilege, my pleasure to stand before you to bring on my father, the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Last week, I want to say a very special thank you to Reverend Granger Browning, Ebenezer Baptist Church. I had the opportunity to support him on Men's Day. From there, I went to Cookee County down in Evergreen, Alabama. God bless Evergreen, Alabama. And I want to thank my friend, Brother Albert Turner, Commissioner. His father was the head of the SCLC for Reverend Martin Luther King while he was alive. I said, while he was alive. I want to thank Reverend Stephen Thurston. Reverend Thurston's father stood with the Reverend Martin Luther King while he was alive. I want to thank our honoree today, the right brother, Reverend Dr. and Army veteran, Brother Bobby Rush. He supported Reverend Martin Luther King while he was alive. There are a lot of fakes going on now. A lot of people are trying to appropriate our history. You saw the headline where they wanted Julia Roberts to play as Harriet Tubman because she was such an action-packed hero. And what did the news executives say? They said that black folks didn't remember that long ago, and it didn't matter who could play Harriet Tubman, so they wanted to find someone with blonde hair, blue eyes, to take our heroes. Come on, you all, we've got to fight. Whose job is this to fight for our children's freedom? Why do we let our children sit at home and sleep when we're honoring the Dr. Bobby Rush today? Why, when I went to Detroit, when we eulogized and buried and memorialized the late John Conyers, we didn't empty all the public schools in Detroit to pay homage, to respect one of our leaders, the man who signed more progressive legislation than anyone in American history on Capitol Hill? See, civil rights started in 1864, if you will. And then it got vetoed in 1865, voting rights. It was 100 years later that we actually got the right. John Conyers signed that legislation in 1964. 100 years later, he signed civil rights legislation 100 years later. When everyone thought it was a joke, and we used to go to Washington, D.C., to go out there into the mud in the middle of January saying, "Happy birthday, Reverend Martin Luther King." It was John Conyers that had proposed that legislation when Stephen Morris, known affectionately as Stevie Wonder, wrote the song "Happy Birthday," and then it became a national federal holiday and the federal government shut it down. But the market stayed open. It was the Reverend Jesse Jackson that went to Wall Street to meet with Chairman Dick Grosso of the New York Stock Exchange, to meet with Sandy Weill, the head of the world's largest bank, and said, "Why is the New York Stock Exchange open?" Mr. Grosso said, "We never even thought about it. Let me poll our members." We have a private member organization. We were at 11 Wall Street. He went down there, polled them, came back and says, "Reverend Jackson, I have good news for you. In 1999, the New York Stock Exchange will be closed in honor of the Reverend Martin Luther King." Why am I saying this? Because too many of us are letting our children get a free pass. I wasn't born knowing what to do. My father and mother drugged me up, made me slit in here, made me nod in here, brought me out in the cold, brought me out in the rain. They said, "You're going to learn to fight for yourself." We've got a generation of children that are technically competent, but I think character and culturally, they're incompetent. Don't tell me things aren't fair. Of course that's true. When have they been fair? The question is, what are you doing to fight to make it fair? What are you doing to make a difference? What are you doing for someone else? Or do you just simply show up to organizations and events when you need something? But you don't want to stand in line like the rest of the people because somebody told you that you're exceptional. Somebody told you that you're special. Well, if you haven't read the book Grit, you ought to read the book Grit. And what they go on to talk about is some of the most salient success factors you can put in your child. And number one, they tell you, do not tell your child they're smart. When your child does something well, tell them congratulations on having worked hard. When a child thinks they're smart and they stop trying to work hard, in the end, the tortoise is going to beat the hare every time. We need to stop living with exceptionalism. It's happening to all of us at the same time everywhere. You can be in Naperville, Illinois today. You can be in Gurnee next week. You can live in Beverly Hills, or you can live in Greenwich, Connecticut. You can live in Palm Beach if you want to. You're not going to escape the fight for racial and social justice.
Come on, Jonathan.
And I want to say on this day, to the great Bobby Rush, a generation that has survived assassination attempts.
Yes.
Those that had to fight for victory abroad and victory at home. For him having never stayed away from the fight. Some people come out for a day and go away for a year. Some people come out for a week and go away for another 10 years. Some people in season and out of season have never left the field. And so for that generation, I want to say thank you. When I see Miss Maxine Waters, that's our living legend of Miss Harriet Tubman. She took on the president first. The president attacked that black woman, and she wasn't afraid of him at all. And she says, if you hit me, you better not miss, because you don't want a wounded Maxine Waters coming after you. When Bobby Rush's friend was assassinated, Brother Chairman Fred Hampton, at 21 years of age, they did not retreat. They didn't turn to drugs. They didn't turn to a bottle. They turned to empowerment and started voting and registering and getting involved so they could make decisions about our lives. My father, when I think of him and I see that picture of Martin Luther King on the ground with his brains blown out, he didn't turn around. He didn't quit. They got energized and they fought and they stayed on the battlefield. Reverend Martin Luther King taught us that the church should be the headlights leading the way, not looking out the rearview mirror. So a man that's keenly articulate, instinctively intelligent, persuasively analytical, a man, if I could ask God to fashion someone that I could have as a father, that I could grow up to be like, I'd want to be like Reverend Jesse Jackson. I bring you my father, the Reverend Jesse Jackson.